You opened your eyes at 3 a.m. last night. The room was dark, the house was quiet, and the same loop was already waiting for you. The bills, the conversation you should have ended differently, the thing you said in 2009 that nobody else remembers. You tried to fall back asleep. You couldn't. Eventually, you just lay there, watching the ceiling, wondering what was wrong with you. Most people assume the answer is simple. You're stressed. You're not sleeping well. You're getting older. But that's not quite right. The real answer is older than stress. It's older than insomnia. It's older than the light bulb that taught you sleep was supposed to come in one block. It goes back to a time when waking up at 3 a.m. wasn't a malfunction. It was the most important job in the tribe. And the program is still running. Right now, inside you. For most of human history, people did not sleep the way you sleep. In 2001, a historian at Virginia Tech named A. Roger Ekirch published a paper in the American Historical Review. It changed how we understand sleep entirely. He had spent years going through diaries, court records, medical texts, and letters from pre-industrial Europe, and he kept finding the same two phrases: first sleep, second sleep. It wasn't poetry. It was the schedule. People went to bed shortly after dark. They slept for about 4 hours. Then they woke up, and they stayed awake for 1 or 2 hours in the middle of the night, in the dark. They prayed. They wrote.
They had sex.
They visited their neighbors. They tended the fire. And then they went back to bed and slept another 4 hours until dawn. This wasn't unusual. Ekirch found more than 500 references to it across centuries of writing. First sleep and second sleep was simply how humans slept. The wakeful period in the middle even had a name: the watch. And then it disappeared, almost overnight. The cause, as best as researchers can tell, was the spread of artificial light. As street lamps and oil lamps and eventually electricity pushed back the dark, people stayed up later and later. They compressed their sleep into a single block and forgot the old rhythm had ever existed. Within 2 or 3 generations, segmented sleep vanished from the written record. By 1900, almost no one remembered it had ever been the default. So when you wake up at 3 a.m. and can't fall back asleep, you're not failing. You're falling into a rhythm your ancestors lived in every single night for thousands of years. Your body is doing exactly what bodies used to do. But that's only half the story. And honestly, what comes next is even stranger. Because in the 1990s, a psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health decided to test whether the old rhythm was still inside us. His name was Thomas Ware. The experiment was simple. He took a group of healthy adult subjects and put them in a controlled environment for 1 month. Every night for 14 hours, the room was completely dark. No phones, no screens, no artificial light. Just the kind of long winter night humans had lived inside for almost their entire evolutionary history. For the first few nights, the subjects slept the way modern humans sleep. 1 block, 8 hours, straight through. But within a few weeks, every single one of them began to slip into something else. They would fall asleep early in the evening, sleep for about 4 hours, then quietly wake up. And here is what Ware found that nobody expected. The middle period, the hour or two of wakefulness between the two sleeps, wasn't anxious. It wasn't restless. The subjects described it as the calmest, most peaceful state they had ever experienced. Their bodies were producing elevated levels of prolactin, a hormone associated with deep relaxation and meditative states. They didn't lie there worrying. They just sat. Some described it as the first time in their adult lives they had ever felt truly still. Ware published the findings in the Journal of Sleep Research in 1992. The conclusion was unsettling. The old rhythm was still inside us. All of it. The 2 sleeps. The peaceful middle. The body knew exactly how to do it. The only thing we had lost was the world that made it possible. But the strangest part isn't that the old rhythm came back. It's why yours feels so dark. In 2017, an anthropologist named David Sampson at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, published a study in Proceedings of the Royal Society B that asked a question almost nobody had thought to ask. When humans were living in small tribes on the savannah, surrounded by predators, who was watching the fire at night? Sampson and his team spent weeks observing the Hadza. They're a hunter-gatherer tribe in Tanzania whose lifestyle still closely resembles the way humans lived for tens of thousands of years before farming. They tracked the sleep patterns of every adult in the camp. 220 hours of observation, 22 nights, roughly 20 adults, and they found something extraordinary. Across all of that time, the longest single stretch where every adult in the camp was asleep simultaneously was 18 minutes. 18 minutes out of 220 hours. The rest of the time, somebody was always awake. Not on purpose, not on a shift roster, just naturally. Different members of the group had slightly different sleep timings, slightly different wake patterns, slightly different chronotypes. The older adults tended to wake earliest, the younger ones tended to stay up latest. And somewhere in the middle of the night, around 2 or 3 a.m., there was almost always at least one person sitting up, tending the embers, listening to the dark. Sampson called it the sentinel hypothesis. Across the entire history of our species, a sleeping tribe was a vulnerable tribe. Predators hunted at night, other groups raided at night. The fire needed to be kept alive. So evolution staggered our sleep. It built a species in which someone was always on watch, automatically, without anyone having to plan it. The cortisol spike that pulls you out of sleep at 3 a.m., the sudden alertness, the threat detection, the hypervigilance scanning the dark, that isn't a malfunction. That's the body reporting for its shift. Which would be fine, except for one thing. You wake up alone. In a tribe, you would have stirred at 3 a.m., sat up, walked to the fire, and found someone already there. Maybe your grandmother, maybe a hunter who had come off the watch before yours. You would have nodded, sat down, said almost nothing. The watch was a quiet, social act. The threat detection circuit in your brain would have done its job, scanned the perimeter, found nothing, and settled back down. Because someone else was awake, because the fire was being tended, because the responsibility was shared. You wake up in a silent house. There's no fire. There's no other watcher. There's no perimeter to scan. So the threat detection circuit, which has nowhere to point itself, turns inward. It starts hunting threats inside the only territory left to hunt. Your own life, your bills, your kids. The mistake you made at work. The thing you said in 2009 that nobody else remembers. The watch keeps running. It has nothing to watch, so it eats you instead. So here's what actually happens at 3 a.m. Your body falls into the old segmented sleep rhythm it lived in for hundreds of thousands of years. Your nervous system snaps into the alertness it used to use for keeping watch over the tribe. It looks around for the other watchers, the fire, the perimeter. None of it is there. So it turns inward and starts scanning you. The next time you wake up at 3 a.m. and can't fall back asleep, the loop in your head isn't a broken brain. It's an inheritance. Every ancestor you ever had took the watch at some point. Some of them did it every night of their lives. They sat beside fires that have long since gone out. They listened for sounds that no longer exist. They kept entire tribes alive through hours that no one else was awake to guard. And they passed something down to you. Not the fear, the role. You are awake at 3 a.m. because for most of human history, somebody had to be. The body that wakes you was built for a job that no longer exists, inside a world that no longer needs it. And it is still showing up to work. You're not broken. You're awake because someone always had to be.